You're listening to Psych with Mike. For more episodes or to connect with the show with comments, ideas, or to be a guest, go to www.psychwithmike.com. Follow the show on Twitter @PsychWithMike or like the Facebook page @PsychWithMike. Now, here's Psych with Mike.
Welcome into the Psych with Mike library. This is Dr. Michael Mahan, and I am here with Miss Kelly Locker and Mr. Brett Newcomb.
I'm always here.
Good morning.
How are you?
Very good, thank you.
Thanks for coming back.
Thank you for having me back.
Yeah.
So we've actually wanted to have you back since the first time that we had you on, because we talked about clinical hypnosis, and then when we went to lunch, we actually spent a lot of that time talking about something else that you do, which actually isn't something else, but another aspect of your practice, which is life regression. And Brett and I found that absolutely fascinating. And so we've just been waiting until a time when we could have you back to be able to talk about that.
Okay, great.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were...
I was looking for something, sorry.
Okay.
I'm listening and tracking. But
Okay.
yes, I want to know about it because I've had clients who claim to have experienced it and who have curiosity questions about it, and I don't have enough information. So if you could start by talking a little bit about what that is. So we were doing some research, and they were calling the title that the articles we found were using. One of them was past life regression, but the other one was interpersonal hypnosis. Transpersonal hypnosis, yeah.
I don't think I've come across that term, transpersonal hypnosis. And they're saying that's the same thing as past?
They're saying it's that past life regression is among a cluster of experiences that they call transpersonal hypnosis.
Okay.
And then there's general disagreement in the field about how to classify all this stuff. Mm-hmm. So
it could be classified under maybe just spiritual hypnosis.
Yes, exactly, and that's what they're talking about. Yes.
Yes. With past life regression, obviously it is being able to use hypnosis, or at least that's how I'm doing it if I'm facilitating it for somebody, using hypnosis to regress them back to what they would perceive as a past life. When I started out doing it, it was more because I was fascinated with the idea of past lives, and I wanted to be able to explore that using hypnosis. So it was just something that was exciting for me. I didn't realize at that point when I first started doing hypnosis that it also had some therapeutic value. So I wasn't doing it in that regard initially. It was just to allow people that would come in and say, yeah, I would like to explore past life regression. And, maybe they wanted to figure out if they had been in a previous lifetime with somebody they were in the current lifetime with, like a spouse. Like, I feel like she's a soulmate. I feel like I've known her before. So they might have been just looking at a connection that they had in the current lifetime. Some people have been fascinated with certain areas. Whatever reason, was always drawn to Asian culture or something like that, so they wanted to explore a particular fascination with the place. Sometimes it is a passion or fascination with a particular skill set. And so we would just explore that. But it wasn't until later that I got additional training to be able to explore it more therapeutically and make some connections between the past lives that they visited and then their, current lifetime, what it meant to them in their current lifetime.
So is that similar to dream interpretation? If somebody shares a dream with you and you start discussing with them what the meaning of the dream is to them, what they get out of it. I mean, if I go into a past life regression and I come back, do I have a sense, an awareness, a memory of what that experience meant to me or means to me today, or do you help me figure that out, but with our exploration and our discussion?
I would say both.
Okay.
So, when you're doing past life regression therapeutically, you do need to work with the client ahead of time, and have maybe multiple sort of, sessions or intakes where you're gathering a lot of history and you're understanding, especially, if you're looking to help them with trauma or help them with a phobia, you're understanding what it is that they're wanting to work on or wanting to eradicate, and move through. But sometimes, even when they're just experiencing a past life, like if they came in to do it and it was just for fun kind of thing, sometimes they will have more of an understanding, an insight that they garnered all on their own. And other times, I am helping them connect some dots a little bit. I'll say, this is what I was kind of feeling or sensing as you were talking. Does this make sense to you? And maybe it doesn't, maybe it doesn't, but, I'm connecting dots as I'm doing the session and collecting, their information basically, because I'm, asking them questions and talking them through the lifetime. They're giving me information. I scribe everything down, so I think it's both, where I'm helping them connect dots, but they garner a lot of insight on their own.
So when you do this from your perspective, does it seem like that these are symbolic representations of things that they are working through, or do you think that these are actual life events that they are remembering and reporting?
Well, I'm not sure it matters what I
Good answer.
believe. It's what's more important is what they believe from it. But I've had many experiences with clients or patients where when they've had the experience, even those that originally did not believe in past, but were wanting to explore it, because, they had their own fascination with it. And it's different from dreams in that they will say, I know this was real. And we've all had knowing before, right? If you do believe you're a spiritual being having a human experience, we've all been places before, maybe experienced deja vu, or somehow just knew something. You were like, I don't know how I know it, I just know it, And they have that same sense. And, once they experience it, then you're not going to be able to refute their knowing, so to speak. And they believe it's not a dream.
But for me, that would be the essential difference, is that in a dream, when I talk to clients about dreams, I don't believe and they don't believe that this was a real thing. They recognize it as symbology. But when you talk to people about these life regression experiences, they believe that these things are true. These things were events that happened to them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do. And you can achieve, obviously, past life memories, it happens sometimes spontaneously for people, sometimes when visiting a place and they have a past life memory. It happens through meditation, again, achieving that altered state of consciousness, and they can have their own past life memory. They also have transpersonal, as you were saying, experiences, though, through dreams, where it starts out maybe as a dream, which they recognize that wasn't real, it didn't make sense, there was no logical order, it was sort of chaotic, like dreams often are. But then, somebody showed up to me. It could have been a past loved one or something like that.
So
it has a different feel to it, and it's hard to put words to articulate it, but they feel that was my loved one visiting me. That wasn't me dreaming about him or her. So it just has a different quality or feel, and I think many people have experienced things like that and just don't know, how to talk about it or how to define it.
Or aren't willing to because of the risk of social approbation. I remember my mother, when her husband died, told me a year or so after that for at least a week after his funeral, after they buried him, she would go to bed at night and she would wake up and he'd be laying there in bed next to her in the suit that he had on in the casket, and they would talk about the children and the money and the farm and what needed to be done and what had been left undone. And a week or so went by of regular visits discussing concerns, and then one time he said, "This is my last trip, I won't be back." But she subsequently articulated a belief in heaven and an afterlife that she didn't seem to have before. And so I have to assume that you get those kinds of interpretations, that kind of feedback from people that have those experiences. And it strengthens their belief system if they have those kinds of experiences. But what if you don't have a belief system? How do you make sense out of that? You're, if I'm hearing you accurately, you say they make sense out of it because they feel that it's real and they accept that. Is there?
At that point, then the belief system starts to change, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the difference between just knowing something because they've read about it and having actually experienced it for themselves.
Right.
And there's a deeper knowing, what some people might call claircognizance, because we all have other senses, what some people call soul senses, right? Where that's clear knowing, or clear seeing, clairvoyance. There's all those different soul senses. And that's because we all have that internal guidance system as a spiritual being. And so, once you experience that clear kind of knowing, well, yes, it's going to alter, your belief system.
Well, and the argument gets made that people are like radio receivers with multiple channels, and that we all have 3 or 4 channels that we all know about and acknowledge, but that there are many other frequencies that we can receive on that we're not conscious of. And that sounds really plausible. If you know anything about radio, it is really plausible, but it's not evidentiary. It's not innate within us. I mean, to accept that. So if you have an experience, you have to have an explanation. And that's where we come up with things like deja vu. That explains, how did I come down this road and know that tree was going to be there? But you have, I think we've all had the sense of that experience. Turn a corner and know somebody's going to be standing there, or have a conversation with you and know that I had this conversation before, although I've only ever met you once before. Yeah, exactly. Knew exactly what you were going to say, knew what you looked like, So we have, all the near-death stuff that Elizabeth Kubler-Ross talks about. No matter what's fascinating to me about that is that in her research worldwide, in every culture and from every religion, the experiences that were reported were universally the same.
Yeah, to me that is evidentiary. How do you dispute that? Because, the stuff that I've read in Brian Weiss's book, or Michael Newton's books, or Dolores Cannon's books, or Edgar Cayce, or, that have done the past life regression work, there are a lot of similarities, especially when, the person regresses to that moment after death, what some people call the life between lives kind of state.
Right.
There's a lot of similarities in it,
almost universal.
There's always that light. They see the white light.
The roaring, the train sound.
And that's with a near-death experience, yes. But, in the past life, when I'm doing that regression work too, I am having them visit the death scene and how they exited that life. And we're reviewing that afterwards. We review the lessons in that lifetime. Then we look to apply, how does this, benefit or help you today? Or what is the significance of you having, gone to this past life? How does it help you today, in 2020?
So you said you take notes, copious notes when they're...
Yes, I'm scribing their exact words.
And then do you give them a copy of that? Or do you
yes,
tape the session so they can take it with them, or how do you?
I used to tape the sessions, and if they would like to tape, I have them use their own phone.
Right.
And we'll just record it using their phones now. But no, I do scribe it, so they always get a copy of it as well. I don't have anybody that says I don't want a copy. They want it. Sometimes there's details that they won't remember, but when coming out of hypnosis and that deep, relaxed state, when they first come out, they're going to remember everything. It's like a dream, but eventually they're going to have details of it. So they're going to want the notes so they can go back over it and kind of remember. And, and I'm writing the lessons down and stuff like that, what they said that they have learned. And, we're helping to try and connect dots.
So when you first did this and somebody came to you or in your training or wherever you first encountered it, and somebody had a past life experience, were you afraid? Were you anxious? Did you feel comfortable? Did you feel like you knew what to do with that?
Oh, no, I was very nervous.
Yeah.
I was very nervous the first time. But my actual first client that came in was a disbeliever. Did not believe in the hypnosis process, did not believe in past life or past lives, and wanted to basically debunk it.
Right.
So that made me even more nervous. I'm like, okay, great, And in the beginning, I would regress back and to have them just visit several lifetimes. And again, I didn't completely understand therapeutic value. And he was somebody I hadn't even met before. So we weren't doing it for any other reason than he said, I just want to explore this and see if it's even real.
So at that time, was that the intent, like you were doing hypnosis, you were doing past life regression, and this person came in and said, I don't believe in, he told you that up front, I don't believe in this, I want to debunk this, and then
he wanted to record it.
and when you put him under, then he couldn't debunk it because he had a regressive experience.
Yes, we regressed him back to 3 different lifetimes. They were all extremely detailed. I was asking questions, of course, and gathering information, and this was being recorded too, so I wasn't even scribing stuff at that point. Again, it wasn't for therapeutic value, it was just for exploration of the idea. And so it was all being recorded, and when I brought him out, he was stunned. That way, he was stunned, and he said, you were asking me questions, but I was experiencing so much more than you even realized. I could smell things. I felt exactly what those people were feeling. And some of them were violent lifetimes, and there was fear and there was anger, and he felt everything explicitly. And, again, when it's that real for them, and these are things that he wouldn't even imagine. He was a woman in one lifetime. That never occurred to him at all. So, he definitely experienced that feeling of, I know.
So then there was a question that I've been thinking about that I wanted to ask, and I'm going to now combine these two. So my sense would be that in hypnosis, we hypnotize a client and we expect them to be able to go to the place or find the information that they need. We don't direct them to do that. We trust their innate ability to do that. So then I'm assuming that the same thing is true here. You're not trying to direct them to a life, or you're expecting them to be able to innately be able to find the information that's going to be important for them. Yes, because that is how Brian Weiss stumbled upon it too. He wasn't even trying to do past life regression. He was doing current life regression work with a patient that had a lot of phobias and different trauma and stuff like that. And it was just a very general directive. Go back to the time when this was first an issue for you, became an issue for you. That's it. Right. That's it. And so then, what then occurs to me is that then I wonder, and this is an unanswerable question, if this guy really was a disbeliever or if he was repressing his own need, right? I mean, maybe he felt like it was ego dystonic for him to say, oh, I believe in past life, but there must have been some part of him that did.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there was some dissonance between those two parts, obviously.
Exactly,
yes.
Obviously, right. Wow. So, I mean, I imagine that was very elucidating then for him. Yes. So then, do you think that experience, so if he comes in and says, I want to debunk this, but now I've had these, not only a singular regressive experience, but multiple regressive experiences, and I was experiencing so much more than even you were aware of, is the resolving that dissonance, is that then traumatic for the individual?
Traumatic. I don't see that as traumatic. I would guess it would produce some initial confusion as the mind is sort of trying to integrate, the different concepts.
But you've never had the experience where someone decompensated as a result of saying, "Oh God, I had these experiences, and now I don't know how to resolve this in my head."
No.
Okay.
No, I have not.
Because then for me, then I have to believe that's egocentric for them. It has to be true to their core. They had to believe that it was possible to begin with.
And it works the same way that if the mind, again, is not ready to know something, it's not,
exactly.
It's not going to come forth.
Repression and suppression.
And I had that happen recently, doing a little bit of regressive work with a client and just exploring and seeing, and again, I gave the open directive to go back to, the time when this first became an issue kind of thing. And sometimes I use the example of going in, a tunnel, and there's different doorways and portals in the tunnel, so go back through a tunnel in time, and there's different doorways and portals, and choose the best one for you, the one that'll take you back to that time when this first became an issue for you. Once you step into that doorway, take a deep breath, and allow yourself to be there 100%. And at that point, she had stepped into a doorway or a portal. because I say, when you're there, just lightly nod your head. Yes, I knew she was there, and I said, tell me what's going on. And she said, they won't let me in. I'm not ready. It's too painful. And so she went back into a tunnel, or back into the tunnel, and chose a different doorway. I just instructed her to go back in, choose a different portal or doorway. That's fine. And she went to regressed to a current lifetime memory. I have a feeling that might have been a past life memory, but she wasn't ready for it.
And whatever the memory was, she wasn't ready for it.
She wasn't ready for it, and she said they.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, that is extremely interesting. Was she able to bring out of the trance what she meant by they? No. Yeah. So then, because I had another question, which was, is this a single application or progressive? I guess it could be either.
Yeah. You mean...
Would you do this multiple times with a single client?
Yes, you can do it multiple times. In fact, that's what I encourage people to do, again, to connect more dots. And when you read other books of, like Brian Weiss, who's done this, his whole career for many decades kind of thing, when he's working with somebody that has a lot of trauma or, emotional dysfunction and phobias and things like that, it's often not one lifetime that is going to help or ameliorate the symptoms. It is a series of lifetimes that they regress back to before they get a lot more what's the word I'm looking for, help with the issues, basically, before we see them the symptoms eradicating. So it's not just one. Usually, is from what I've read and understand, it's not just one lifetime.
So let's say that I came to you and said, okay, I want to get at the root of my addictive personality, and maybe it isn't this lifetime, and so then I want to really know, I want to go to the core of it. That would be something that you could work with.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, I have no idea. I mean, if it's a past life that's contributing to then the addictive personality, as you call it. But that's something if the client wanted to, then yes, then we could explore that. Brian Weiss says in his books, it's about, at least with his patient or caseload, 40% of people needed to explore past lives to get relief from their symptoms. The other 60%, no, he was able to work with them and do regression to current life.
Right, because you could have material from this life that is causing you distress. There's no question. But then the only way to resolve the material from the past life is to actually experience that in the past life.
Yeah,
in some way, shape, or form. Again, it doesn't have to be through hypnosis, and you can do work yourself, but obviously somebody who's trained to do it knows how, the questions to ask and is able to help make the connections. If it's spontaneous for the client, sometimes it is, insight and, spontaneous recovery of different pain and things like that can happen for the client all on their own, but obviously it helps if you're working with somebody who's trained therapeutically in it.
So I'm curious about the age range of people that you have worked with. How young do you do this work? How early in life do people have past life regressions? Because the literature that we read was suggesting that younger people have more present awareness of a past life than older people do. And what I was telling Mike before you got here, the older I am, the closer to death I get, the more I really want this to be true. So I'm curious about that as well. So what age ranges have you personally worked with?
Well, as far as past life regression, I've only worked with adults. Okay. And all different ages of adults. I have been very curious to do this with children. However, they're minors. Parents need to be okay with it.
You have children. You have children. Do them. Here, kids, sit down.
Yeah, I'm already aware of the past lives of my kids. But so absolutely I could do that with my children. But they still see me as mommy, not as a hypnotherapist.
It worked for Jean Piaget.
Yeah, exactly. Study your own kids.
Yeah, but if you did any of that reading with, I think it's Ian Stevenson, he did a lot of work with children on that and doing studies of like either their near-death experiences or their own knowledge, right, that they had been somebody else before. And sometimes kids will just tell you that, or they'll have memories. And I've had that happen before with some, children that I've worked with, that they talk about things and say things that I am pretty sure they're speaking of a past life because they have so much knowledge of World War I planes, and they're fascinated with it, and they can tell you everything about it, kind of thing. And that it goes beyond
no known way of knowing that information.
Yeah. But again, I haven't worked with children if they were old enough, meaning it's a little bit longer of a session. So I have hypnotized young children for different issues, and I usually don't work with them unless they're at least, 5 or 6. And even then, they're shorter, obviously, sessions. So, I think I would like them a little bit older to do past life because I don't think they can have the attention span otherwise. But, they're just as possible of, being regressed as an adult.
I wonder if a child were to regress to a violent past life, how the child would be able to integrate that information into their current
My experience with hypnosis is limited, much more than yours. But my experience is if they get to a place they can't be, they come out.
You don't think a child would?
I think they'd just come out of it.
No, I think it's the same thing. The mind, the higher self is going to protect them. They're not going to go or
no matter what.
They're not ready.
That's like defense mechanisms are there to protect you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't worry about that. But obviously the child has to be interested in some fashion. The parent has to be okay with it. So I've not had the opportunity to work with an actual minor.
So an incredibly personal question. Feel free not to answer it.
Okay.
Right?
I'd say go on record as no, just to start.
If you've worked with this and you've met many people who have past life experiences, does that form your view of an afterlife? Does it make you more comfortable that there is one, meaning another life? Or what does that do to your own understanding? Because if you don't have it, I believe that, as you said when we started, it doesn't make a difference what your beliefs are. You can still work with what the concerns and beliefs of the patient are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So where does that fit in your own process?
No.
Okay, that's fine.
Well, no, honestly, I already had my own belief system around this before I started doing the work. Okay. And that's part of what led me into the fascination of just hypnotherapy.
It's just reinforced that for you?
Yes, it has reinforced that for me. But for someone like Brian Weiss, who had no belief in it, obviously, yes, it did then inform his new belief system. Yeah. And it did slowly, it took quite a patient then for him to change his beliefs, because he still was skeptical. He still didn't completely embrace it. He was like, oh no, this is her imagination. But then he had to say, then how is it that she's getting better? Symptoms are
and they came with messages for him. In many lives, many masters, they had stories about his own life.
That was the clincher for him, for sure. Because Catherine, the patient that, he called her Catherine, that he worked with, had those transpersonal experiences that were significant to him. So that was huge, of course. But some people again say, well, what if this is the imagination? You're just making this up. But again,
they had facts there was no way for them to have.
That too.
About the son with the heart condition.
How do you explain it when the patient then is getting better?
Yeah.
Is getting better. The chronic pain is going away, or the fears are now gone.
Of course, that's the same answer we give about therapy in general. If people get better, I mean, what I continue to say is I believe in the process. If we can just engage in the same place at the same time in a safe way, and we spend that time together, you'll get better. And I think that's what makes therapy work. But I can't write it down with a pencil and paper and go to a library and find evidence of it.
Right. But that's what makes therapy fascinating too. Because there is so much that we don't understand and so much more to explore. So it's new and fresh all the time. Yeah. That's what makes it fun.
So you sold me. I'm ready to be regressed and record my experience.
Great.
So
there's a difference between regression and infantilizing.
Not if I believe it.
That's right. That's what matters.
That's
most,
right.
is my
There you
go.
belief.
Yeah.
So hopefully this was entertaining and informative for people, and you got something out of it. I learned a ton. I know we went long, so I hope that people will indulge us and listen to the whole episode. And if you have any questions or anything that you would like to know or comment on, you can always get us at the website www.psychwithmike.com. As always, the music that appears on Psych with Mike is written and performed by Mr. Benjamin DeClue, and if it's Friday, it's Psych with Mike.